Today's show, a recap of some of the Capitals' top prospects at the World Junior Championships. And as of right now, there have been no contract extension talks with Logan Thompson.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, I do a bit of a recap of some of the Capitals' top prospects at the World Junior Championships. In particular, I'm talking about Ryan Leonard and his breakout performance. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I will talk about Logan Thompson. And I think it's a pretty common thought that most people think that Logan Thompson is the Capitals' #1 netminder. But if that is the case, why have there been no contract extension talks? I'll talk about that. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about what was ultimately behind the physical game with the Capitals versus the Canucks. But just to get it going here, talking about a recap of some of the Capitals' top prospects at the World Junior Championships. And I know it's been a bit of time here, but there have been a lot of games and a lot of news surrounding this team that I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about some of the Capitals' bright and rising stars and how they performed under the big lights on the international stage. And it's been very exciting. So that's what we're going to dive into is the latest updates with some of the Capitals' top prospects. Today, we're talking about the Capitals' prospects at the 2025 IIHF World Junior Championships here over the past couple of weeks. Quite a tournament for the Capitals, a big performance for Ryan Leonard and Cole Hutson that just to kind of taken their game to the next level, and excitement abounds as I'm talking Ryan Leonard here in particular off the top. He fixes to be a big part of the Capitals' future. But first off, a massive congratulations goes to Team USA for the incredible achievement in securing back-to-back gold medals. And there was quite a bit of questions. I had the questions as well, is that why did Ryan Leonard not want to join the team at the end of last season? Or even if not then, why didn't he want to join the team to start this season? And what we had heard, I think, makes more sense now is he is getting another opportunity to help Boston College in their pursuit for a championship, but also on the international stage. He was key in the World Junior Championship. Team USA back-to-back wins, and it's a fantastic moment for that program in general, but I don't want to make this sound like it's just about Ryan Leonard. We had 6 of our own prospects making some big waves in Ottawa, and a lot of this thanks goes out to Ross Mahoney and his crew for drafting some truly great players. And those are going to be the bright and rising stars of the future. But Ryan Leonard being named captain and MVP of Team USA, well, that was quite an accomplishment. Let's start with Leonard, our first-round pick from 2023, who captained the U.S. team. And there is a lot of excitement that surrounds Ryan Leonard, as we know that he is going to be a big piece of the future, and it could be at the end of this season. I guess it all remains to be seen of exactly what Boston College does, but what we've seen from him this season shows that he has gotten better, and ultimately I think the right decision for him to work on his game. But as far as the tournament, Leonard was absolutely outstanding through the entire tournament, picking up MVP and best forward honors. That is going to be a Capital at the end of this season or next season. A lot of excitement, and he has a lot of snarl in his game. And he liked the fact that the fans in attendance were actually booing him. I'm paraphrasing here. He said he knew he was doing a good job when he was getting booed by the fans over there. But he racked up 5 goals and 5 assists. And while he might not have topped the scoring charts, he and his line mates Gabe Perreault and James Higgins were an offensive powerhouse. So, that's what I'm talking about, and why there's so much excitement that surrounds Ryan Leonard joining this team, as this team looks pretty good right now. But what are some of the things that we know about this year's team is that they're struggling a little bit with scoring 5-on-5, and there's some questions about some of the lineup. How much better will the Capitals be with Ryan Leonard in the mix? But together, that line, they tallied an impressive 29 points over 7 games. Talk about some true chemistry that those players had out on the ice. So quite stunning. But a new player I oftentimes talk about Ryan Leonard, and I don't speak of quite as often, and I should, is Cole Hutson, a defensive standout, another player that is going to be absolutely huge once he's ready to take his game to the next level. Our second round pick in 2024, who made history by leading the tournament in scoring among defensemen with 11 points. Yes, not a forward. We're talking about defenseman Cole Hutson and his huge showing. 11 points. If you are a Caps-centric fan and you don't pay too much attention to prospects, go ahead and circle his name in your head or put a bookmark. He is going to be absolutely huge. He had a standout 5-assist game against Germany and showed just how impactful he can be on both ends of the ice. So a two-way player that has an offensive flair. Hutson is heading back to Boston University, and let's not forget we'll get to see him up against Leonard and Boston College crew in home series later this month. So excitement abounds. I say that because, I like this year's Capitals team, but I get especially giddy with the thought of what they're going to look like next year and the years to come. And we need those big faces, as we know that Alex Ovechkin is under contract for this season and the following season, and under contract, that's it. So we are looking for the next batch of great stars. And another player, oftentimes I talk about the upper echelon, and I'm not going to say that he's not upper echelon, but oftentimes it's Ryan Leonard that I talk about. But Petr Sikora, talking about him turning to the Czech Republic. We've got Petr Sikora, a 6th-round pick from 2024, who faced some tough crowds after Canada's shocking early exit. He picked up a thigh injury from a hit, but didn't let that stop him from contributing to the game-winning power play goal that sent Team Canada packing for the 2nd year in a row. So for Canada, a place that truly loves their brand of hockey, they did have their struggles in this tournament. So Petr Sikora playing a bit of a spoiler there. He ended the tournament with 4 goals and 3 assists and helped his team snag a bronze medal after a thrilling shootout against Sweden. So if you take a look at the prospects, and I'll have to have the guys from Locked On Prospects on the show again to talk about those players, quite stunning what those players were able to do. And you take a look at the Capitals as I record this in first place in the Eastern Conference, the Metro, and only the Golden Knights have more points than them. This team is only going to get better next year. So let's talk about the other players, the Capitals prospects in the tournament. Miroslav Satan, our 7th-round pick from a 2024, managed 1 assist in Slovakia's quarterfinal loss to Finland. Not the finish they were looking for, but he'll definitely be one to watch in the future. That is for sure. Latvia was quite the underdog this year, showcasing some tenacious play and grabbing 2 overtime victories. But let's even scan down a little bit further. I would like to cover all of these players. Eric Smateko, our 3rd-round pick from 2024, stood out with 5 goals in 5 games, but Latvia's run ended with a close 3-2 defeat to Sweden in the quarters. So let's not forget about one other player, and that's Leon Mugli, who added 5 assists for Switzerland, although they fell to the U.S. in a 7-2 loss. So all things considered, a lot of young talent that is going to be able to join this team in, the relatively near future. A lot of excitement abounds as this team is going to get markedly better in the near future. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Logan Thompson, and I think that it's a bit of a foregone conclusion that he is the number one netminder for the Capitals. But if that's the case, why have there been no talks of contract extension? I'll break it all down straight ahead. Going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy was exciting and unforgettable. Now, Game Times has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And that is the frustrating part, is that your favorite band is coming to town, your favorite sports team, but you're wondering, what is the view of the stage, where the playing surface is going to be like, where I'm sitting? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So talking netminding in this segment, and it is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I love talking goalies, and I love especially talking about Capitals netminders. And the big acquisition that was made in the offseason was the Capitals acquiring Logan Thompson from the Vegas Golden Knights. And we know that Charlie Lindgren was really good the previous season. My thought on it was that it was going to be Charlie Lindgren and either Hunter Shepard or Clay Stevenson. But former GM Brian McClellan did something kind of outside the box. He knew that Charlie Lindgren was good last season, but he didn't know if that was sustainable. And what do you know? Well, Charlie Lindgren has seen some struggles this year. Hasn't been a total bust, but ultimately a bit of a stroke of genius by former GM Brian McClellan that he was able to acquire Logan Thompson. But the question, the Capitals are in the catbird seat, if you will, talking about they're in a good position where they have two great netminders for under $2 million. You take a look at what Logan Thompson's making. He has $700-some thousand. With the season that he's having this year, he is not going to come cheap. But if that is the case, and, it's kind of like I say, a foregone conclusion to me anyway, that Logan Thompson is the number one netminder, then why have there been no talks of contract extension? So that's what we're going to dive into in this segment. That talking about the Capitals as they hit the halfway mark of the 24-25 season with a stellar 27 wins, 10 losses, and 4 overtime losses. Last summer, the Caps made some big roster changes, and those moves are really paying off. Logan Thompson is one, PLD, scoring 2 goals in the last game. Chikrin, Roy, Mangiapane, these kind of players have been huge. But we're going to drill down a little bit more specifically on Logan Thompson in this segment. One of the standout stories of this season has been Logan Thompson, former Golden Knight, a guy that didn't feel like he got the credit that he deserved because, well, the Golden Knights said that, those goalies are playing well, but it's kind of the defense that's getting it done. But talking about Thompson here, who was acquired from the Golden Knights for 2 third-round draft picks. Quite a steal. Thompson has been nothing short of stellar, boasting an impressive record of 17-2-2 in his first 21 starts. And one of the things I've talked about in the show, and I still believe it, is they really need to come to terms with who their number one netminder is. You don't oftentimes see in the NFL, like, we don't know who our starting quarterback's going to be. We're kind of going to just alternate back and forth. And I know it's not an apples for apples comparison, more of an apples and oranges comparison, but I think that if the Capitals have bigger plans for doing great things, and I imagine they would since they're an NHL team, I think they need to go with more of what I'm going to say is the sure thing. And as of right now, I believe that is LT. Talking about a future uncertainty with Logan Thompson, there's been a bit of uncertainty hanging in the air regarding Thompson's future with the team. Kevin Weeks talked about this from ESPN, and the NHL Network indicate that the Capitals haven't made a contract offer to him yet. What are they thinking? And considering his current salary is $767,000, it's clear he's due for a significant raise. Now, where this gets a little bit difficult is we know $767,000 is how much the Capitals are paying. So let's take a look around the league and how much other netminders are making. Most notably, Igor Shesterkin signed an 8-year, $92 million contract, and Mackenzie Blackwood to a 5-year, $26.25 million contract. It would stand to reason that Logan Thompson is going to be making something similar to that. Do you guys kind of get what I'm talking about now, that's kind of a feel-good story? Does Elliot Friedman kind of hear what I'm talking about right now? That I know the Capitals said that they want LT and Charlie Lindgren, but if he's making anywhere near Logan Thompson, that 26.25 or $92 million contract, the Capitals are not going to be able to afford both of those netminders unless Charlie Lindgren is willing to take quite a bit of a haircut, if you know what I mean. I think the Capitals have viable options, and I've banged the drum for the longest time for Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson, or if they didn't like that, thought they could always go outside of the organization to get more of maybe a netminder on the back nine of his career, an established netminder, but maybe someone that's not going to make an arm and a leg. Think someone like, Jonathan Quick or something of that nature. That just came top of my mind. So some intriguing questions, and ultimately, why not? Well, I think that, putting this story together and what I read there from Kevin Weeks is that Kevin Weeks' thoughts, but you got to think that probably Logan Thompson's agent is saying, let's see where this goes. I mean, why do I want to sign low? If I wait till the end of the season, or the off season, I can demand the King's ransom and very well get it. So I think that that's probably what it has to do with. You got to think that Chris Patrick and the Capitals would be all in on an extension right now. But I think that probably Logan Thompson and his representation probably are like, whoa. Let's see where this season goes this year. And then we'll talk a turkey here, a long-term deal. Unless, Chris Patrick's like, backing up the Brinks truck and say, I don't even want to entertain this thought. Let's get it done. But as Weeks mentioned, the Capitals have a fantastic season story unfolding, but the clock is ticking as both of the goalies are pending unrestricted free agents. So in a lot of ways, you kind of think about it, and, I hate to bang on Charlie Lindgren here, but, as of late has not been really great. He could turn it around, but in a lot of ways, maybe the Capitals would have been better parting ways with him at the trade deadline last season, like they were talking about. Could have got a bigger return. Now that, say he kind of follows this same trajectory into the end of the season, he is going to be slightly diminished goods, if you know what I'm talking about. But with Thompson's breakout season, it's hard to draw comparisons to Blackwood since they're both achieving similar stats around the same age. It's hard not to, rather. So, but taking a look at future projections, this was from AFP Analytics. Thompson's next contract could be in the ballpark of $22.56 million. Another comparable, Jordan Binnington's $36 million deal is kind of a measuring stick, if you will. Plus, you take a look at the salary cap projected to rise to $92.5 million next season. Things could get very interesting for both Thompson and the Capitals as they navigate free agency. Now, if that was the only thing that they had to deal with, maybe I'd be feeling pretty good about this. But who else do the Capitals have to come to terms with? Charlie Lindgren, Andrew Mangiapane, Lars Eller, Jacob Chikrin, Nick Dowd, Taylor Radish, and Jacob Vrana. Now, of course, if we're going to prioritize, I would say Jacob Chikrin. I would say Nick Dowd in particular, if I had to pick two from there. Taylor Radish has been good. Lars Eller, you know where I'm at with that. Andrew Mangiapane, I think they probably have a better option in Ryan Leonard. So it's not going to be easy, and this is definitely going to test the acumen and the resolve, I guess you could say, of Chris Patrick on how to get this all done. It was a masterclass by former GM Brian McClellan last summer. Let's see what Chris Patrick and the Capitals can get done. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the physical game against the Canucks. What was behind that? Two teams that don't face each other hardly ever. What was behind that? I'll talk about that all straight ahead. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for your live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And listen, there is a lot of football that's played on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday. But we're coming up to the playoffs here, and we're talking Commanders, we're talking Ravens, and if you want to have vested interest in all of the games, regardless of who's playing, open up the FanDuel app and put a little bit of money on those games. All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day, the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe or follow Locked On Capitals on YouTube and give it a 5-star rating, give it a thumbs up, share all of those kind of things. It really helps grow the channel. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about the Chippy game, the Capitals versus the Canucks, and what was behind that and what brought out the ire of PLD, where there was a bit of a shoving match. And, what turned into a shoving match turned into quite a melee out on the ice. It's a bit interesting. You would expect this with the Capitals versus the Penguins, the Rangers, the Flyers, the Hurricanes, something of that nature. But to see this kind of physical reaction for a team that the Capitals usually only play 1 or 2 times a season, usually 2 times a season, well, it is quite of a head scratcher. So let's dig into that here a little bit. And that brawl-filled showdown with the Canucks. As soon as the first period kicked off, tensions started to boil over, and it began with PLD that shoved Canucks captain Quinn Hughes along the boards. And just like that, it turned into a full-on fight. And I think that that's probably what it had to do with, was that PLD shoved the Canucks captain. And, well, kind of in the same way, if someone shoved Alex Ovechkin, well, Tom Wilson or Duhaime or someone of that nature is going to have to answer. But PLD in his own right is a big boy and could handle himself. Still a bit interesting that they got so involved. And what we saw was key players like Connor McMichael, Kiefer Sherwood, and the Capitals' Tom Wilson jump into the action, tossing their gloves and throwing punches. And it was a bit interesting is that Connor McMichael, who was just like this young kid in the league, is kind of really taking to being an NHL player and getting involved in these kind of things. I don't know how he would fare with just a solo fight between him and one other player, being that was kind of a group melee there. But what I like is that he is feeling that confidence and that it is that team tough mentality. And I mean, it was chaos, equipment everywhere, players throwing down, and officials scrambling to regain control of what was a crazy situation, and where things could have really gone off the rails for the Capitals and how they have to show a little bit more restraint. I know I'm talking to you, Tom Wilson. I don't want, physicality to be removed from the game, but like you said, you're best served on the ice, not in the penalty box. But once everything was sorted out, we saw a bunch of penalties. Dubois got minors for hooking and roughing. Wilson, JT Miller, McMichael, and Sherwood all handed matching roughing penalties. So you take a look at it. It wasn't just the Capitals, but, those penalties, especially I'm talking Connor Garland later in the game, kind of a bit of a Brad Marchand of the Canucks, trying to instigate a penalty or draw a penalty, if you will, on Tom Wilson. Sometimes you need to rise above. I have to take my own medicine. Doctor, heal thyself. I'm a kind of guy that if you push me, I get involved as well. If you want to pick a fight with me, not necessarily physically, but, I think that is just the human nature that if you shove me, I'm going to shove back. Sometimes it's very difficult to take the high road. But the rest of that game was just as intense, with both teams battling hard, a stalemate, 1-1 for a majority of the game. The Capitals in the first period, really good, all things considered. PLD getting a goal later in the first period. The wheel wobbled in the second period. And the third period is when things kind of got off the rails. Had to go to OT again. But just a bit of a thing there. And I had to think about a little bit is why was there the physical altercation? And you take a look at the players involved, it makes a little bit more sense. But if there's one thing I know that probably Spencer Carberry's preaching to his players is you have to show some level of restraint. Stand up when you need to stand up, but you also don't want to spend a good chunk of the game in the penalty box. That's not going to benefit you or your team. I know that, it might help a little bit with your pride. And from that moment, I saw Connor Garland shove Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson was having a hard time swallowing down that rage. I knew that it was going to boil over somewhere, and it was behind the net. Ultimately, the Capitals walked away victorious, an OT winner. But had the Capitals lost that game, I think that we would be shining the spotlight a little bit more on those costly penalties. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.